then you have Abraham marrying Keturah. Now, Keturah, was she another race? Well, I know she's the mother of the Midianites, and I know the Midianites are not Israelites, because while the Israelites are in Egypt, in Egyptian bondage, the Midianites are over here in the desert. So they can't be the same family, the same race, because they're not down here in Egypt. All right? Now, here we have Joseph. Joseph married an Egyptian. A lot of interracial marriages right here. And the reason why I'm saying this, friends, I'm trying to show you that when you have a doctrine that wants to exclude or be exclusive of everybody and say God's favoring just this people forever, then you're going to have to find a way to keep from marrying. But Joseph married. Joseph was down in Egypt. He thought his father gave up on him, didn't love him, so he even named his children. You know, I've forgotten my father's house. So he married the daughter of Pharaoh. Here she's an Egyptian. Now notice this. Moses married a Midianite. Now remember, Moses was down in Egypt. The Bible says when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. Moses killed an Egyptian. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. Sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. And go on, verse 21, and Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter. So he married a Midianite. He married somebody from another race. All right? Another race. Married a Midianite. Now, what did Moses look like? What did Moses look like? You know, when you look at what the Bible says, let's see, if in Exodus 2:19 up here, when the women's father asked them how you got here so soon, they came to rule their father and said, how's it ye come so soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us, and watered the flock. Now, how did they know he was an Egyptian? What was it about him that made him look like an Egyptian? Unless Egyptians are fair complected, unless Egyptians are the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Anglo-Saxons, then he must have looked something different. He looked like somebody that they would recognize was an Egyptian. What did he look like? See? If you want to say the Midianites were fair complected, then obviously Moses wasn't. Otherwise they'd say, well, he looks like us, you know. So you have him married a Midianite. Now remember, Moses was a Levite. Moses was from the tribe of Levi, so I know he was an Israelite. He was a true Israelite, but he didn't marry an Israelite. He married a Midianite. Now, in Numbers 12 and verse 1, and Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. For he married an Ethiopian woman. Now, was this Zipporah? You know, I don't think scholars really know who he was or who she was, but I know this. This woman is an Ethiopian. Now, she is descendants of Ham as well. She's descendant of another son of Ham, Cush. All right? Now, the Ethiopians, they're dark complected. You know, if you see Ethiopians today, they're dark complected. So Moses had married an Ethiopian. Now, if he was not supposed to, as a Levite, if he's supposed to marry somebody in his own race, why didn't God tell him, Moses, you can't have her? But instead it was Miriam and Aaron that were chastised, not Moses. And here he'd married an Ethiopian. And I'm simply making the point, friends, it's not about race. God was not concerned so much about who you marry as far as race is concerned. He's more concerned about something else, and that's called righteousness. It's called righteousness. And if you marry someone who is righteous, then that's the most important thing. It's not the race. Because God had a way to make sure that if you married someone who was outside of your race, in order to keep the covenant that God made with Abraham, you were brought in. If you were a male, you were circumcised. You were brought into the covenant. And so there you continue in the covenant, and now there you are a Jew. Now you're an Israelite, or a true Israelite. I try to use his term. You see what I'm saying, friends? God didn't tell these folks not to marry people of other race. He said to these folks, you need to leave him alone. He's a righteous man, a meek man, and meek in all the earth. So if this was not a white woman, I don't know what she could have been. An Ethiopian, you know, is another race, and I seriously doubt he's going to say she was white. And they came from descendants of Ham. So, you know, who is she? Who is she? Keep this in mind. You want to try to get Canaanites, you can't get them across the flood. I want to make that point one more time. He can't get them across the flood. They have to be a descendant of Noah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, James. First of all, the Hamites were white, the Shemites were white, and the Japhethites were white. Archaeology has proved this over and over again, that the distribution of the people of Genesis 10, who were the descendants of Noah, were all white, plain and simple. The Ethiopians were white, the Egyptians were white. They just did a DNA study of King Tut, proving that he is white. His DNA is 99.99% white. What's not to understand? The Ethiopian woman and the Midianites were the descendants of Shem. The descendants of Shem. So Moses got his wife from the white Shemites. That's where he got his wife from. All the Israelite men had to marry women of other tribes, of other white tribes, primarily of Shemitic tribes, but the Hamites were also white. There's no doubt about this. All of the archaeological proof is that the descendants of Noah were all white. They could not possibly be black, oriental, and white. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1, verses 11 and 12. And then we'll get to Genesis chapter 6 and the flood. It says, "And God said, Let the earth bring forth grass and herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. If you plant a wheat seed in the ground, you don't get oats and barley, you get wheat. If you mate mules, you will get mules. If you mate horses, you get horses." Throughout history, when white people mated, when a white woman and a white man mated, they begot white children. Throughout history, when black people mated, they begot black children. When the white man discovered the black race in Africa in the Middle Ages, the explorers that came back and told us about them, there were no black people in Europe for millennia, none. And there weren't any Mongolians in Europe. The whites created whites, the Mongolians created Mongolians, the blacks created blacks. So that's the way it has always been. And verse 12, "And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself." Again, we have our seed within ourselves, and after its kind, and God saw that it was good. Everybody who knows genetics knows that DNA is designed to replicate itself. It does not, by chance, variegate from white to black to orient. It just doesn't do that. That's an assumption that Mr. Oldfield is making, that this racial evolution theory, this quick evolution, actually took place. No, it never took place. Now, Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. "And it came to pass, when Adamites," the word here is Adam in the original Hebrew, "began to multiply on the face of earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God," that is the Elohim, usually known as the Nephilim, the fallen angels, "saw the daughters of men," that word again is Adam, "and they were fair, and they took them wives, all of which they chose. And Yahweh said, My spirit shall not always strive with this disobedient man," right? "For that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days." In the days, we're talking about the flood of Noah. "And also after that." They survived the flood, folks. The Bible plainly tells us that they did. "And also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown." As I said earlier, the tribe of Gath is the descendant of these fallen angel creatures.